The first bill on the agenda for today is House File 1350. Representative Boldon is the chief author of the bill. This bill is for cities of the first class, authority to provide to impose ordinances on land or fee dedications on permit applications. And we're going to move to adopt the local government division report first. And I believe we can do this by voice vote. I'm seeing heads nod. All those in favor of adoption of the local government division report say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no.
No.
That is a couple dissenting. That motion is approved. Next, we have, let's see, Representative Boldon's bill to move House File 1350 to be referred to the General Register. Representative Boldon, if you would, well, I'll move Representative Boldon's bill, House File 1350 to the General Register. Representative Boldon, if you would like to present your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. House File 1350 would provide a helpful tool for Rochester and Duluth to have better equity for park funding across the entire city. It would provide parity with the special authority the other two first-class cities, being Minneapolis and St. Paul, received in 2013 around collection of parkland dedication fees for redevelopment sites and commercial industrial. Current statute only allows cities to require parkland dedication only if the property is subdivided or at the legal division of unplatted land. Minneapolis and St. Paul received special legislation in 2013 that allows their municipalities to require parkland dedication when most development occurs. This was due to the amount of development and redevelopment of existing parcels that does not require subdivision of the property, but still generates need and impact for the park system. Rochester and Duluth are now experiencing this situation and are seeking state legislation to provide an opportunity to have a local conversation about how parkland dedication could be collected more equitably. This bill would bring more equity and consistency to park funding by equalizing the collection and use of parkland fees across a wider spectrum of properties in the community. Secondly, it aims to provide adequate parkland improvements serving the downtown area, a growing part of Rochester. We all know the importance of parks, especially in a pandemic, for mental health, community gathering, exercise, and more. I have with me a council member from Rochester, Sean Palmer, who will be providing brief testimony on the bill. We also have Mike Nigber, head of Parks and Forestry for the City of Rochester, and Heather Corcoran, legislative policy analyst for the city with us today. And with your permission, Mr. Chair, I will now turn it over to Council Member Palmer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Representative Boldon. If your first testifier could proceed with their testimony. And members, we do have several testifiers, both in support and opposed to the bill today. I do want to allow adequate time for member questions. So we will be going to a vote on this bill at 9:05. So if testifiers could please keep their comments succinct and brief, that would be very much appreciated. Councilmember Palmer, if you would please proceed with your testimony.
Good morning and thank you, Chair. My name is Sean Palmer. I am a council person for the City of Rochester. I serve the 5th Ward. Rochester City Council is a nonpartisan council. I'm here today as a long advocate for our parks and a founding member of our Parks Foundation. I also work in the building industry and have for the last 40 years. I thank you, Representative Boldon, for carrying this bill for us. This bill would provide more consistency. Right now, some developers pay it, those that develop in subdivisions, and those that don't redevelop or in a subdivision. Simply put, this focus should be treating people equally. Downtown people deserve to have the parks in the cities, the parks and the other part of the cities do, and the city is responsible for providing these parks. To give you some sense of scale that we're working with, Rochester is the 3rd largest city with 119,000 people, 3 million visitors a year. In 2019, we collected $23,720 in parkland dedication fees. In 2018, we collected $122,000, and a new playground costs around $400,000. Our current parkland dedication rate is roughly $366 per single family dwelling, or $1,500 per multifamily. In the last 3 years, we've collected in 2020, we collected $228,000 per year in Parkland dedication. Rochester is a community with 119,000 residents, a regional and world center for healthcare that hosts close to 3 million visitors a year. Our city has a very strong fiscal management history. We're one of the few cities in the state that has a AAA bond rating and also received the Certificate for Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for almost 50 years, the longest in the state of Minnesota. Our elected city council will and has continued to take on our role seriously to protect and utilize public assets and resources that we're entrusted with. I'll give you one example. Riverwalk Apartments was built. They had 152 residential units and where once 3 homes were stood. They did not contribute to our Parkland dedication. We have done and will continue to do local engagement with our builders, developers, and others. We see that the state legislators, we see this state legislation and authority to first stop and having the opportunity to drive our future conversation locally. We engaged with our local builders group, the Rochester area builders, recently on this issue. And we have spoken with many of our area developers about this idea and have shared support for the ideas of parks, a key amenity to their properties, and noted that the current inconsistency that occurs for their projects, whether they develop in a subdivision or pay fees now or redeveloped in downtown as already platted land. This is a topic that's been discussed locally for over 8 years. We are asking for support for this bill and thank you to the committee for the consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. And again, testifiers, please, next on my list, I have Ms. Heather Corcoran. For the remaining testifiers, please look at your notes, and if you could make whatever edits you feel are necessary to keep your testimony to 2 minutes. We have other bills on the agenda, and just out of fairness to everybody, if we could limit our comments to 2 minutes, that would be much appreciated. Ms. Heather Corcoran, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I'll just be available, as will Mike Nigber, if there are questions, and we'll let you get to the next testifiers.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you for being with us here today. Representative Boldon, did you have any other testifiers?
No, Mr. Chair, I don't believe I do.
Okay. Next on my list, I then have Mr. Matthew Spellman. Mr. Spellman, if you would proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members, for the record, my name is Matt Spellman. I'm with the Minnesota Realtors Association. Our association represents over 21,000 real estate professionals, helping buyers and sellers across Minnesota transfer all types of property. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Each year, our members develop and approve a legislative agenda, which our 2021 agenda included a statement of opposition to policies that increase the cost of housing. Consequently, I'm here this morning to share our opposition to House File 1350, as it clearly increases the cost of housing. Minnesota is experiencing an immense inventory shortage, with our last housing report showing we currently have less than 1 month's supply. Coupling the current inventory shortage with interest rates being as low as they are, the heightened demand on our existing housing stock continues to drive prices up, adversely impacting low to moderate income earners the most. Our most affordably priced homes on the market have seen a drastic jump in price, with the statewide median hitting an all-time high of $275,000. Minnesota needs to stimulate new housing development to bring balance into the market by alleviating some of the pressure on existing housing stock. And in doing so, government shouldn't continue to add to the cost of construction, which is ultimately passed on to the homeowner. That being said, House File 1350 only serves to add to the cost of housing, as this fee will inevitably be passed on to the homeowner. Policies like this are further burdening Minnesota homebuyers when they need help the most. If the legislature is serious about addressing the issues facing our housing market, it cannot continue to enact policies such as this. Mr. Chair and members, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Spellman, for your testimony. Next on my list of testifiers, I have Mr. Peter Coyle. If you would please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Peter Coyle. I'm a lawyer lobbyist with Larkin Hoffman. I represent Housing First Minnesota. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to the committee this morning. My comments have been shared previously with Representative Boldon, so I presume she won't be surprised that Housing First continues to have reservations, if not opposition, to the proposed bill, and I say that respectfully. First of all, as Mr. Spellman just noted, Minnesota is experiencing a housing affordability crisis. We are an outlier in the country relative to at least the upper Midwest for the high cost of housing especially at the starter home level, and the gap that exists between people of color and other populations. And this bill, with all due respect, will take us in the wrong direction. And for that reason, we are opposing it. I'm also noting that the city of Rochester recently passed a park referendum that adds significant new dollars into the park's budget. I went back and reviewed the committee hearing from last week, and I didn't note any discussion of the fact that that new source of funding was already being provided by taxpayers in Rochester. And it raises a concern for us as to whether or not this bill is needed at this time. And secondly, it represents a significant expansion in how park fees are collected from home buyers. Rochester still has a very large growing housing market for which the existing statute applies. And for our members, it doesn't seem that the change in statute is necessary at this time. And so for that reason, Mr. Chairman, we would respectfully oppose the bill and we would urge members not to adopt it. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak this morning, and I'm happy to stand for questions if there are any for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle. Appreciate your testimony today. Thank you for being with us. Members, I do not have any other pre-registered testifiers, so we will move to member questions. Representative Kosnick, you are first on my list. If you would please proceed with your question.
Thank you, Chair Carlson and Representative Boldon. Nice to meet you. Haven't met you yet, but welcome to the legislature. I'm curious if this policy that you're proposing to match other cities of the first class, why is it significant that cities of the first class should be allowed to do this? And I know Rochester and Duluth are kind of have metro-centric envy of Minneapolis and St. Paul, but you know, a city like Lakeville or Maple Grove or Plymouth is going to approach a pretty high population. Why are you not proposing this policy more broadly to other cities? And then if you could have one of the testifiers, maybe the council member, talk about, you know, he was on the planning for the parks he mentioned. They have a park levy that we just found out. You know, why wasn't it better planned out instead of continuing to socialize the cost of playground equipment across all the taxpayers?
All right, Representative Boldon, I think there was a question in there for you directly as the author, and then also a question for Council Member Palmer. So Representative Boldon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, for the question. In terms of why we are asking for this and why not other areas, I would say, you know, we are asking for this in Rochester because our redevelopment and land use warrants it. We would like to have the conversation locally around how to implement and how to make this happen, and how to sort of equitably share the funding and the money for our park system. So we are now at a place where this makes sense for our city, just the same as it has in the past for Minneapolis and St. Paul. And then I think I will hand it off to my testifier, whether Councilmember Palmer or perhaps Mike Nigber would like to weigh in on that as well.
Yeah, Councilmember Palmer, any quick comments to the question?
Well, yes, our Parkland dedication or our Parkland referendum last November passed by 63%. And we had done a survey back in April of that year to see how much money we could raise for our parks. And it was at 61% at $2 million. We've underfunded the parks since about 2008, since we had the recession. Rochester at one time had 950 houses being built. The last year we had 225 houses being built. The cost for our parkland right now is about $30 per resident, which is far below the national average. We use a lot of partnerships with our park department to keep our costs low, and that's very important to the city council.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. And members, I'm getting quite a list here of members. Just to remind folks that we will be moving to a vote at 9:05, so we've got a little under 20 minutes. Members, please keep your questions succinct with a short follow-up if necessary. Also remind members that this bill did go before local government. You can refer to the minutes from that meeting to where some of these questions, you may find the answers there as well. So please keep your questions to the purview before the committee. Next, Representative Nash, did you want to go next?
I will wrap it up, but I do know that there are amendments from my side of the aisle, and I was wondering when you're going to be dealing with amendments.
Representative Nash, let's see here. I'm not seeing any amendments. Chair Nelson, am I missing something here?
Mr. Chair, members, I don't believe there were any pre-filed amendments other than the one the author had a pre-filed amendment that I believe she's not offering.
Very well, I had that
Why
incorrect.
don't you go, Mr.
Chair?
Rudolph? Why don't we have
Mr.
Mr.
Chair?
Rudolph?
Yes, Representative
Mr.
Nash.
Chair,
Representative Nash.
I believe Representative Quam had tried to get your attention.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was a lot of talking there. Representative Quam, quickly, you had a question?
yes, for the chair. During local government, there was very little discussion. In fact, there was not any allowance of the amendments that were filed, and amendments were filed in this committee way before the deadline. So I guess I'm getting the impression that the chair is not going to allow minority amendments on some of these bills, which I think is not standard operating procedure.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Chair Nelson.
I was wrong. It wasn't on the agenda. I was wrong. I missed it. There were 3 pre-filed amendments, so I'm wrong. So I apologize for that, Representative Quam.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, give me just a second here. Okay, so this is the fun thing of working remotely, right? Representative Quam. Okay, here we go. So I see you have 3 amendments. Representative Quam, is that correct?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
And I took myself off of the questioning portion and was going to save my time for the amendments.
Yes, and I think we want to deal with those now, Representative Quam. So I see that there are 3 amendments, your amendments, starting with the A9. Representative Quam, would you like to move the A9 amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Representative Quam moves the A9 amendment. Representative Quam, if you would proceed with describing your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill isn't just about the city of Rochester, and what is done usually sets up new cities coming to the city of the first class. Instead of the regional setup that Rochester has, I think it'd be most appropriate to have it centralized or located near where the development fees are taken. And so 20 blocks, I think, is more than enough to cover where you should have the fees going to. So it would restrict the fees collected to be used within a normal distance from the location.
Thank you, Representative Quam. Representative Boldon, comments? Do I have any other? I have lots of hands up. Any questions with regards to the A9 amendment?
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, Representative Boldon, 1 second. I just want to see if there's any other member questions, and I'm going to be sure to let you get the final word on the amendment. I'm seeing none. So Representative Boldon to the A9 amendment.
Mr. Chair, I do have my hand up when it's appropriate.
Okay, Representative Koznick to the A9 amendment.
Thank you. And I believe Representative Quam, the amendment author, would get the final comments.
Fair enough.
So it doesn't, I guess I'm curious if the author is, why the author, the city would oppose the amendment to having money taken from prospective homeowners but then putting the amenity not necessarily that close to where the project is. So Representative Quam's amendment seems quite common sense, that if you're going to take money from a builder or developer, which is essentially from the new homeowner, to build a park, but you're not going to build it anywhere near where they may live, it doesn't make sense that homeowner should be getting taxed for this. And members, previously we talked about the important issue of affordable housing, and I just don't see how this bill even gets us there. But I think this is a great amendment, Representative Quam. If the government's going to take money from you for a stated purpose, it should be accessible to those people. And especially in this particular case, if it's a more multi-housing type building, that people in those housing developments should have the access to the parks if that's what the money's being used for. So I would support Representative Quam's amendment.
All right, thank you, Representative Koznick. Representative Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would respectfully oppose this amendment for a couple of reasons. One, the 20 blocks is just sort of an arbitrary distance. Current state, Rochester is set up in zones or quadrants, so I would anticipate that this funding would stay within those zone or quadrants. That's what's done in other similar situations. Secondly, this amendment would sunset these abilities for Minneapolis and St. Paul at a point in the future. And the intention of this bill is not to change anything that Minneapolis or St. Paul is currently doing. So that being said, I would be open to continue conversations with Representative Quam around this concern.
Thank you, Representative Boldon. Representative Quam, final comment on the A9 amendment.
I think it's reasonable a walking distance be worked into the discussion if you're doing apartments and you have people that are using mass transit.
Thank you, Representative Quam.
Roll call, Mr. Chair.
Roll call has been requested. There will be a roll call. Ms. Spreck, if you would please take the roll.
Chair Nelson,
No.
Vice Chair Carlson,
No.
Representative Nash,
Yes.
Representative Bonner,
No.
Representative Drazkowski,
Aye.
Representative Elkins,
No.
Representative Greenman,
No.
Representative Cleaborn,
No.
Representative Koznick,
Aye.
Representative Mason,
No.
Representative New Brindley,
Aye.
Representative Pulaski,
Pulaski, no.
Representative Quam.
Aye.
With a vote of 5 ayes and 8 nays, the motion does not prevail.
Thank you, Ms. Spreck. The motion does not prevail. The next amendment we have is the A10 amendment. Representative Quam, would you like to move the A10 amendment?
Chair, I would like to move the A10 amendment. And the A10 amendment is, we're talking park fees, and we're talking generally that's households. And in Rochester, about 40,000 people, back pre-pandemic, would come in and out just on Highway 14 that runs before Byron and Casson. And, frankly, if you're doing an industrial development, you're not adding households. And I think that the fee should be just restricted to households and families that would be utilizing this park. And the discussion about the center of Rochester being able to fund that for the visitors, part of the DMC funding is in regards to amenities for patients and visitors. And out of that money, that should cover people that are visiting that don't live there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Quam. Representative Boldon to the A10 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would again respectfully oppose this amendment. Currently, you can't and Rochester does not collect on a new commercial industrial space subdivision fee. So I would anticipate that would be part of the local conversation.
Thank you, Representative Boldon. Representative Quam, final comments on the A10 amendment?
Yes, again, this is not just Rochester in this bill, and this sets precedents for additional cities of the first class, Bloomington, et cetera, that might be joining that classification soon. And I think we need to be diligent in doing good governance and looking beyond just the current situation within a single city. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Quam. Members, we're going to move to a vote on the A10 amendment. All those in favor of the so please unmute yourself, members. All those in favor, do I hear somebody?
Aye.
Oh, Representative Koznick, you're voting. Okay, wonderful. I love that. Good. It's nice to know that people are paying attention. All those in favor of the A10 amendment, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say no.
No.
The A10 amendment does not prevail. Representative Quam, third and final amendment, the A11. Representative Quam, if you would please describe your amendment. Or I'm sorry, would you please move your, would you like to move your amendment?
I would so move, Mr. Chair.
Wonderful. Thank you, Representative Quam. Please proceed with describing your amendment.
Actually, this amendment is meant to where a city, if you're going to be collecting for a plan change, ought to have a plan and execute it in a timely fashion. It also contains language so that any funds would be returned if not used within a timely fashion. And it has the mechanism of a property tax credit, which I believe has less of a tax impact than if cash was given back, and also may avoid, I guess, cities having to push cash out, I think is sometimes difficult depending on the exact timing. And so this would soften the effects to the city, and the final person, years later, it might be someone else that owns, say, a condo in a complex, and it might be difficult or tricky having the taxation of cash coming in, but a property tax credit, I think, would be less burdensome in a tax format. And once again, I want to set up a mechanism that'll work across cities of the first class instead of having multiple flavors. And I would like a roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Quam. Representative Boldon to the A11 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would respectfully oppose this amendment. The 3-year time frame in this amendment is a bit problematic. The current parks capital improvement cycle is based on a 6-year cycle, and 3 years is a bit of a short time to raise enough money to be used and plan, and for have that whole process to go through. The other piece I would say is that this bill also contains a sunset of these abilities for Minneapolis and St. Paul, and again, that is not the intention of this bill. That being said, I would be open to continuing to work with Representative Quam on this concern area.
Thank you, Representative Boldon. A roll call on the A11 amendment has been requested, so there will be a roll call. Ms. Spreck, if you would please take the roll.
Chair Nelson,
No.
Vice Chair Carlson,
No.
Representative Nash,
Aye.
Representative Bonner,
No.
Representative Drazkowski,
Aye.
Representative Elkins,
No.
Representative Greenman,
No.
Representative Cleaborn,
No.
Representative Koznick,
Aye.
Representative Mason,
No.
Representative Newt Brindley,
Aye.
Representative Pulowski,
Pulowski, no.
Representative Quam.
Aye.
With a vote of 5 ayes and 8 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted.
The amendment is not adopted. Thank you, Ms. Spreck. Members, I have 3 members that would still like to speak to the bill itself. I'm going to cut it off at those 3. I have Representative Claiborne, Representative Drazkowski, and Representative Nash. And then we will move to a vote. Representative Claiborne, if you could proceed with your question, please.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, it's really more of a comment. I'd like to thank Representative Boldon for bringing this bill. Since Plymouth was mentioned in the earlier discussion, I just want to be on the record of saying Plymouth supports local control in these issues. And it is a matter of fairness and to make sure that everyone realizes that our parks and trails support the property values within our communities and holds those investments of our families whole. And so thank you very much for bringing this. And I ask for a yes vote from our committee members.
Thank you, Representative Claiborne. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask the chair, first of all, is this bill going to the tax committee since it's a tax increase?
Representative Drazkowski, I have this bill going to the general register.
Okay. I wonder if Representative Markwart's aware of this bill going through, this tax bill going through, Mr. Chair. Maybe someone should talk with him, but I have a question maybe for the author or the testifier from Rochester. We know that the city of Minneapolis and likely the city of St. Paul too aspire to be the highest density park cities on the planet. As a matter of fact, Minneapolis has already accomplished that. More parks per square mile per capita, whatever the measurement is, than any city on the planet. Is that what Rochester is aspiring to be as they commit to this additional tax and related spending?
Representative Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just speak briefly and then hand it off to Councilmember Palmer. What we are looking to do is to provide equity in funding and offer more park space and green space for the residents of Rochester as we are a growing community. With that, I'll hand it off to Representative Palmer.
Councilmember Palmer, if you could be brief, please.
Our master plan does not call for that. We have a master plan we did 6 years ago, and that is what we're working for. The needs of that master plan are $80 to $100 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Representative Drazkowski, a quick follow-up, then I'm going to move to Representative Rash. Yep, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a city of the first class aspiring to be like the other 2 cities of the first class that are outlined in the bill and the discussion. We have cities in Minneapolis and St. Paul that are engaging in recreational spending for recreational endeavors. This is an over-the-top bill that an overtaxed city already in the city of Rochester, as I talk to residents and their frustration there. This is a tax increase. This is going to hurt the people of Rochester and hurt the community and surrounding communities of Rochester. I'm going to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Nash, I have you last on my list to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just skip questions. I'll go straight to commentary. Members, we heard a bill not too long ago about ways to assess fees that will be collected earlier than they're actually being used, and I oppose that. House File 1350 does very much the same thing. This is going to collect money on the front end, and it may not be used for any foreseeable time. I believe the deadline is open-ended. I find that quite troubling. And I was listening to the testimony of the council member talking about how price increases do impact people's availability or ability to get into a home. And, you know, for every $1,000 increase in a price, you're effectively pricing out, I believe, 4,000 people. And I'm not sure if Mr. Spellman is still here from the realtors, but that's effectively what you're doing. So you're going to collect money on the front end, $366 per single family, $1,500 for a multifamily in a city that already levied $2 million for parks within the last 12 months. And I just think that this is, it's very, very aggressive. And, you know, you put certain parcels of land in jeopardy of seeing a double whammy on collections of this. This is certainly something that I'm sensitive to. Everybody likes a good park, as do I, but Mr. Chair, this adds way too much cost. It adds way too much burden on the people who are going to be trying to live in whatever city. And it's very broad brush. This is elevating any city of the first class. We talk about being precise here in the House. And to the author, her claim was that 20 blocks is an arbitrary number, but she hopes that the city of Rochester will not go beyond that. Well, I find that hoping is not often actually ever delivered when you enable certain things like this. Being prescriptive as to what you're trying to do in a bill is the way to go. So I would encourage all of my members and all of the members in the committee to vote no. This is far too broad brushed. And you could look at way too many years before it actually gets put into play after it's being collected. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Nash. Representative Boldon, a few closing comments before we move to a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. I appreciate the conversation. And just to reiterate, what we are looking to do is to create a more equitable way to invest in and support our parks in Rochester, and looking to be in alignment with other cities of the first class. This one-time fee, as was said, is currently about $350 for a single family home. I believe is a solid investment in our green spaces and parks, and which are so important to our communities. So I would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Boldon. With that, Representative Boldon renews her motion to refer House file. I'm sorry, I renew my motion to refer House File 1350 to the General Register. And if the committee clerk would take the roll.
Chair Nelson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Carlson,
Aye.
Representative Nash,
No.
Representative Bonner,
Aye.
Representative Drazkowski,
No.
Representative Elkins,
Aye.
Representative Greenman, Representative Cleaborn,
Aye.
Representative Koznick,
No.
Representative Mason,
Aye.
Representative New Brindley, Representative New Brindley,
No.
Representative Pulowski,
Pulowski, aye.
Representative Quam.
No.
With a vote of 8 ayes and 5 nays, the motion prevails.
Motion prevails. Thank you, members.